Happy New Year, everybody. Welcome to this year's first edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. We have a lively discussion today about spring hockey because we know that even though it's January when this is being recorded, spring hockey, summer hockey, what are you doing this summer? What are you doing this spring? Those conversations are starting to come up right now. So we wanted to dive into it a little bit as the host, talk about our previous experiences, maybe what to look forward to, and general mindset into the off season, and maybe what you and your kids and your coaches should be looking at from our point of view. Also, this episode, as always, brought to you by whenhockeystops.com. Christy and I wrote a children's book about dealing with adversity and mental fitness. It's a great story, and it's available now for pre-order. The book should be out towards the end of the actual youth season. But if you love what we do here, if you love what the show provides and you want to support us, it's a great way to do it. So head over to whenhockeystops.com right now and pre-order your copy of When Hockey Stops and let us know what you think. So without further ado, enjoy this episode of Our Kids Play Hockey. Play away music. Hello, hockey friends and families around the world, and welcome to another edition of Our Kids Play Hockey, the first edition of 2022, another year in hell. No, I'm just kidding. It's not a year in hell. We're very happy to be here. We're very happy to be here for your 2022 first show of the year. It's January. It's cold outside. There's snow. So naturally, today we're talking about spring hockey because, as Mike Bonelli said to Christy and I on the phone, it's January and the parents are coming up to me. They're coming up to Mike. They're talking about what are we doing in the spring, even though this season's not even over yet. So we wanted to do a show about a few things. One is, why are we even having a conversation about spring hockey right now? We understand the anticipation. Two, what should you do about spring hockey? I think we're going to have a lot of different opinions on that. And then three, kind of what should you do moving forward here? Because like I said, there's still a lot of hockey season left. It's a good mental note to not get too far ahead. But you know, there's nothing wrong with planning every once in a while. But Mike, let's start with you because this was a topic that you wanted to talk about. I think we'll name this episode Spring Hockey in January, Spring Hockey in the winter. Why are we bringing this up today?
Yeah, well, actually, I've been tabling this since November. So, I mean, it's
it's fair.
Really, what are you doing in the spring? When's it? And then you see tryouts, December 18th tryouts for this. And so basically what keeps happening over the last 35, 40 years that I've been as a hockey director, somebody that's been an authority figure in the sport, I've always wavered on both ends of this, right? If you own a rink and you own a facility, you can't close down in March. You got, it depends on what part of the country you're in. A lot of places, they shut down, season's over, becomes a field house. And, but more and more and more of us, that are in the rink industry, have ice rinks that the ice costs the same to keep cold in, April and May than it did back in November and December. So I think there's a balancing act of how do you want to structure that financially for your business? And then what are the obligations that you should, as a hockey director, a rink manager, an administrator, that you should be educating and helping your parents navigate so that you can still make money, keep your business open, but the kids can, kind of get the right balance of what spring hockey might be. So I thought it'd be a good time to talk about it. I mean, Christy's gone through this, right. For a few years, and you're going through it now, but you've also lived it as a player. So I thought it's just to be a good conversation for all of us to have, because it's one of the most probably asked questions I've gotten in the last week is not, what's going on with this weekend's games. It's, what are you doing in the spring? And I try to be, politically correct in my answers to that, right? Just of like, I always preface it, or they preface it by, I know you don't want to talk about spring hockey,
right?
But, and I get it. And
I know it's only January, but
well, then they'll say, but February is 1 month away from the season ending, and all of a sudden he goes, wow, the season is ending. I mean, it's coming to a close. So, and everybody's trying to, it's just like the chicken or the egg, right? Do you start planning now because you don't want to be the last person to get on a team or get in a program?
It's true.
Or know about an opportunity, even though what your heart is probably telling you is, we got to wait. Like I should be thinking about buying lacrosse cleats, not another pair of ice skates. So,
yeah, I hate to be the party pooper here, but but that's who I am. So, I've never been a fan of year-round.
You're the negative. You're the negative pessimist.
That's how everybody knows you, Christy, is the negative one on the show.
Sorry. never been a fan of year-round hockey. And I was always really excited when it ended because it was a great season. Look back, fun. We had good times, we had highs, we had lows, and it was time to end when the season ended. And our kids would put down that stick and pick up another one, whether it be a lacrosse stick or, track, and do something else, get with other people, other friends, pick up some other types of skills. And I liked being outside and enjoying the spring weather and enjoying other parents and doing other things. It's a long season. I'm sorry. We never did spring hockey. We gave it a rest. That's just the way we were.
Yeah. So obviously we're joking about you being the negative.
I understand the rinks are in need.
Right.
And I get that. But we also needed to just step away from it for a little while. Because then when hockey season rolled around, the kids were all excited again. You got to look for signs of burnout for your kids, especially. So before you sign them up for spring hockey, look at some of those telltale signs that maybe it's not the right decision for your family and your kids, right?
Absolutely. Well, I'll say this too. It's not just burnout for the kids. It could be burnout for the coaches too. That's another big part about it.
And the parents.
And the parents too. Yeah. I have mixed thoughts on spring hockey and I'll tell you why, because there's a story here. I always have lots of stories to tell. So look, my attitude is this, going back to what Mike said before we transition out of this. I think parents, the question you have to ask, and coaches, parents, players, is, do you even want to play hockey in the spring? Do your kids want to play hockey in the spring? Because odds are this, when I think about it from a parenting standpoint, keeping in mind, I'm the younger parent here with the youngest kid in hockey. My attitude is this. Okay. Does he want to play spring hockey or does he not? Or she in this case. Right. So my attitude is like, I think my son's going to want to break. So, the other thing too, is like the way the world is right now, it's like, get outside, go play a sport outside, go play soccer, baseball, whatever, little league, I don't care, but maybe go outside, do karate, anything. But let's get away from the rink for a little bit, especially after the last 2 years. Now that's my kid, right? Now I was a kid when I played, I wanted to play year round. That was just me. Keeping in mind I was a little older when I played, obviously when I started. So for me, it was just fun. Now the story I wanted to tell was this. When I started playing around 12 years old, I had an okay first season. A lot of learning curves. Again, I was 12. It was my first year. I had to learn the game quite a bit. And I remember that spring I joined a team, and it was that team, Christy, and they were called the Red Team, where I really exploded for the first time. I understood the game. It was a carefree environment because it was spring league, and I was able to really flourish and have fun. And that team, I always credit that little spring team with the spark that really drove me through to today. Now I'm thinking about it, right? But again, very unique situation. So I think spring hockey can be good.
It's not a one size fits all. It's not a one size fits all.
But the key was
right
this.
For one kid may not be right. Right.
The key with that spring team was this, and looking back on it now, it's funny looking at this in retrospect as a coach, because what I realized about that team now, it was only structured in the sense of, hey, we have a game once a week. There was no real coaching. There was no practices. It was just, hey, go out there and have fun. There was no judgment, right? And I think that because that environment was like that, there's no pressure. It was just go out there and have fun. And again, my skills were accelerating at a rate where that was the right timing for that. I can't stress this enough, right?
Let's bring in our silent partner here, Benelli.
the bearded Benelli. For those of you listening, Mike he's sporting a salt and pepper beard.
He looks so wise, doesn't
he? Does.
Right. So that's what I'm going.
The elder
Speak like Yoda the rest of the episode. Hockey, spring, you must not go.
Must not. Mike,
I'm not.
You would have to agree. You got to agree. I know your older kid is probably going to do a spring hockey league, or is he picking lacrosse? Do you do both?
Yeah, so it's hard, right, as a parent, because there's so much anxiety, because you think like you think that by playing spring and summer, you're helping your child improve because they're getting to play more. But the fact is, science and the studies that USA Hockey and Hockey Canada and Hockey Finland and Hockey Sweden and Czechoslovakia and Switzerland and wherever else, anywhere you want to go, tell you that playing other sports will make you a better athlete 100% all the way around.
Right.
But if you've done your job as a hockey coach and an organization and your kids had a blast, then maybe there is a way to find find a way to keep them together. I mean, so there's so many different variables here because what a lot of people use spring for is to get away from their team, like to look for higher opportunity, to say, you know, to the point where, and I think we've had this conversation, Christy, before, where you're like, where it's like, oh no, I'm not playing spring hockey, and then you go to a tryout and you're like, hey, the guy that said he's not playing spring hockey is there trying out, because there's a lot of anxiety, and there's just like, oh my God, my kid's gonna miss out. But you know, even me, the last few years, I'm like, oh, I wonder if I'm doing the right thing by, you know, having the kids shut down. And then the rink side of me, the ownership side of me says, well, there's got to be a better way. Like where we are in the Northeast, right? And you're in a rink and you own a rink, then your goal should be to build programming to keep kids in your rink. Like if you're going to do spring hockey, make it where all the money is going to you, not to putting a team together to go play a Marlboro every weekend or go play, you know, fly across the country. Like there's to me, there's so much better ways that we can economically help our kids get on the ice and to Lee's point, find creative ways to have fun and explore the game and be more pond hockey-ish in the spring when we don't have the time in the winter. Like our kids don't have the time in the winter to have fun because they're structured. They're in leagues. They're in school. So
I would completely subscribe to that, but based on our experiences, I have yet to see that. You know, these spring leagues are just as serious as they're competitive. It's a lot of, you know, drills and there's no fun.
It might be a higher level of it might be a higher level of competition because all of a sudden, all the kids that think they're elite all gather together. Like they all of a sudden now it gets really ultra competitive. And I think to my point, I want to be in a Coleman pop-up chair on the sideline of a lacrosse game. That's where I want to be.
With a mug.
All right, let's stay with that. I'm a parent. I'm thinking, let's do a spring league. What should I look for if I want that balance for my kid? Where I don't want it to be all work and no play. What are some of the telltale signs of that? What should I look for?
Yeah, well, me personally, even the way I run my own programs, I look for a program that's going to give your child the opportunity to be on the ice the most in a fun environment, that they can be creative and do things on the ice that they can't do in the driveway, you can't do in the park, you can't do by playing other sports. I mean, hockey is so unique because if you're just training, right, you could train for anything. You could be just a great athlete, but hockey becomes very specific. So I think that's where the spring summer phenomenon and the days of, you know, Wayne Gretzky saying, well, in March, I took my skates off, I put them in the closet and I played baseball and lacrosse. And then in August, I found my skates again. If they fit, I got on the ice. I'm just telling you, that's just not there anymore. It's gone. But so how can we find a happy medium? Well, the happy medium is education. It's if your son, daughter could go out and play softball and baseball, lacrosse, taekwondo, find other things. And the nice thing too, hopefully they might even find something that they actually like. Because maybe they hate hockey, and they're like, "Oh, I'm really good at this." And I've seen kids. And again, I hate to be like, "Oh, I've seen 1,000 kids." I've seen so many kids and children that you think they loved hockey and they're dead in their eyes. Like February, they're not hockey. They don't want to play hockey, and all of a sudden they become the greatest track star you've ever seen, or the greatest soccer player, or they picked up a guitar. I know it sounds cliche, and none of us want to admit it. But if we don't give our kids opportunity to do other things, they don't know if they're going to be good at something else. And then all of a sudden you got a 15-year-old that just quits and they have nothing else.
And his whole life has been hockey. So he starts to identify through that. And that can become very dangerous later on. Mike, the other thing too, adversely, when you let your kids try other things, you said, they might find something else they love. It's also important that they might find that they don't like the other things and they really do love hockey, right? I mean, look, most of the listeners are probably married on this show. You spend a few days away from your wife or husband, things tend to be a little bit better when you come back because you see it's not so easy maybe without them, or maybe it is. It depends on your life, obviously. But my point is this: is sometimes it's important to find out what you don't like. Again, we talk about this with young kids. Try different flavors of ice cream because you don't know which one you're going to like if you've only had chocolate. Right? You might like vanilla. So I think it's a great point. I think the other thing too is, you know, when you get to the springtime, and I think we need to give the parents and the coaches listening some actionable items here, Mike. So what I like to do on this show is to try and split it up by age groups. Because like I said, look, when you're older, this is a very different conversation than when you're younger. So from where I sit right now, my son is about to be 8. Right now, I do, unless he wants to, I don't want him to play spring hockey. I actually really do want to get him into other sports. That's the route we're going to take. That's what his mother and I are going to plan. He's 8. Now, if he was 15 and he was serious about playing college, maybe beyond high school. All right. I'm not talking Division I. I'm just talking, he has aspirations. I'm not trying to stop my son or daughter from dreaming. And he wants to be on a spring league team. That's another question. And again, we're going to joke about this too, because in the springtime, that's when the ultra all-star elite AAA select teams are made with 15 different names about how elite they are. Go ahead, Mike.
That's my team. That's my team.
Well, Mike, it's the Benelli All-Star Extra Elite AAA 4 A's. Mike Benelli's team have 4 A's.
You're right.
I wish that helped. If I take the Benelli off, I end up getting more kids. But I think it's absolutely
age groups.
Do the Benelli B All-Stars. The Benelli B All-Stars. Go ahead.
We're not that good. But I think just have fun. But I think you're absolutely right, Christy and Lee. I think it's all age specific. Now, for me, if I had an 8-year-old, I'm going to be on the ice once a week, and then say, hey, listen, there's going to be a league that there's a group of kids that get together. You pay $20 and you're playing 3-on-3. There's 3 teams going on at the same time. It's pond hockey in the spring. I still go to lacrosse. I still go to taekwondo. Make it cheap enough. Hopefully you get enough people, right? Where if I always look at ROI when I'm a hockey director, when I'm setting things up, I have to look at funding these things and look at parents and say, listen, if you have to make a choice of it's 83 degrees on Tuesday night under the lights for a baseball game, and you're like, oh, I'm going to miss my $23.50 hockey session, go to the baseball game. Find a way. And so you have to make, if hockey directors are out there or rink directors and people doing scheduling, find a way to bring the cost down for these parents to allow them to then make and choose and say, listen, I have an 8, a 9, a 10, an 11-year-old. They just want to be in an environment where I don't have to go on a bus. I don't have to get a ticket. I could just go to the rink at my leisure. And that's how you improve. I mean, anybody that's in hockey development will tell you that's how you improve, right? I think, and conversely with the 15-year-old, I mean, the funny thing is, I think most hockey professionals would agree with me that being on the ice 6 days a week and 7 days a week in the spring and the summer is not going to get you where you think you want to go. It's what are you doing in nutrition? What are you doing in the weight room at 15 and 16? Right. What are you doing? How are you hydrating your body? How are you developing different muscles in your body? How are you mentally preparing for the next season? And you need to train that. And if you're playing hockey all the time, you don't have time to train other pieces of your game. And at the end of the day, that's actually what sets the players apart. I just had a conversation with a very high level. Well, he's high level just in the fact that he's a USHL scout, that they don't care about your skill. They care about what's in your brain. Right. They care about what's between your ears. I can develop that other stuff. I can look at a player. I can look at their genetics. I can look at their passion. I can look at the player that at any age. But what is going on between their head? And the only way to do that is to train that. And I don't think we do enough of that in the quote unquote off season, because there is no more off season anymore. And we have to shut it down. And if you could go look for a baseball and look and try to catch a lacrosse ball or play soccer, it just opens up the possibilities for your kids. I know it's counterintuitive. Most of us like, well, how's my kid going to get better at hockey if he doesn't play hockey?
They will.
Well,
they will.
They will.
They will.
Yeah.
And, or like I tell my parents all the time, or they won't. Or they won't. And they won't because
even when you think about the socialization aspect of it. I mean, you think about it. My kids just loved their lacrosse friends, and they were a whole different group of kids and different friends who ran track, and so it was nice to see them bond with kids outside of the hockey team, and they're lifelong friends too. So you got to think about that too, just for socializing and for their mental health. And you don't want to overschedule your kids. Please don't do that.
I talked to a dad the other day, since he loves going to see his lacrosse kid play because he has no idea about lacrosse. And he sits on the sidelines, and he just sits there. It's like, I don't know. I just listen to podcasts like yours, and I just watch my kid play lacrosse because I have no expectations.
That is so fun.
I just look and go, I don't know. Looks like he's having fun.
Right.
Trust the coaches.
You know what's funny
he's
about that,
playing.
Mike? You know what's funny about that is I was talking to one of the parents on my team the other day, and she said to me, she said this totally correct. She says, you know, the problem with it's not a problem. She said the thing with you and my husband, her husband's one of the coaches too, is that you guys just know too much. So, you know, you're watching a Mike game and you just know so much. She goes, it's enjoyable for me because I don't know anything. And I know what she's talking about because I've experienced that too. When I took my kids to other sports in the past, it's actually freeing for us when you get to watch your kid play a sport and just have fun, because with hockey, it's under such a microscope for all three of us. You know, one thing I want to say is this too. I want to look at this from a mental standpoint, because you guys know I'm really invested in mental fitness and that being a major part of this. You know, if I split it up, I'll kind of say this to you guys and you tell me if you agree or disagree, right? The way I look at this from a mental standpoint is from Adams, you know, 6U up through Pee Wee, 12U. So I refuse to give up those names. I love them too much. At those ages, as a parent, I feel like I play a major role in helping my children make a decision for the spring and the summer, meaning that, like, okay, it's my responsibility as their father to kind of maybe make the best decisions for them in terms of, hey, maybe we should try a different sport. Maybe we should do karate. Or maybe, hey, you know what, you could use a little help this summer on your skating. So let's find a skating activity. Or like Mike, you said, I love 3-on-3 leagues. I love non-traditional hockey leagues in the spring. You know, U12 to U15, weird time period. All right. You have to base it on maturity, because you can have a 15-year-old that's 8 and you can have an 8-year-old that's 15 at sometimes. But in that time period, a transition happens in my mind. Okay. And when I look at from, you know, U15 or U12 up, my attitude is not, okay, I have to make the decision. It's, I now need to assist my child in making a decision. And they may make the wrong decision, and I have to be okay with that. Because what I don't want my kids to do, and we alluded to this a minute ago, is get so focused on one thing that they go into post-high school times thinking, if I don't do one thing well, I won't succeed. That is not true. That is not how life works, right? And again, at the end of the day, I want my kid to pick another sport and maybe not be good at it. I want them to learn how to fail elegantly and understand that, okay, if maybe my son or my daughter is really bad at soccer. I'm just picking a bad one, right? Or I'm just picking an example here. But they learn that, okay, well, maybe I need to work a little harder to get a little better at this. You know, it's funny in my life, guys. I recently, again, I'm 38 years old. I recently picked up just playing basketball. Never played basketball my whole life. And I suck at it, and I love it. Yeah. I love that I'm bad at it, because I'm so in. Again, this is just me. I'm a little bit of a nerd with this stuff, but I like working on my shot. I like trying to figure it out. Like, I don't go play men's league or anything like that, but I just enjoy being outside, learning something new because I suck at it, right? And I want that for my own kids, right? I don't want them to be afraid of, oh, I can't shoot a basketball. Let me not try because I'm really good at X, Y, Z. So that's how I break it down in my head. From really up until U12, it's my responsibility to help them make the decision, or like make it for them in a way. And then U12 up through obviously high school, I want them to make the decision, and I'll be there to help them. Does that sound right? Am I crazy?
Isn't that Christy's whole life, right? Christy, you're both your kids. Okay, what are you going to take? What major are you going to take? Oh, well, this is why, you know, think about this and think about what you remember when you really loved this at that summer camp you went to, right? Or, you know, you're doing this as a parent because you have time on your side. You have the ability to say, you know, the kids are thinking the moment, like, oh, I love aeronautics. Yeah, but you don't even know how to, you know, add 2 + 2. I said, that's probably not the greatest like thing for you. But I said, but I think that's the point, right? Is that when as a parent, it's your obligation to not direct,
right,
but to say, lay it on the table and help your kids say, I really, you know, what am I going to take in high school? Spanish, French, you know, whatever it is, you know, think about how am I going to help structure. Like, my wife does all that on our side, right? So I'm like, I said, you do what you want to do, and you're like, well, you can't just do what you want to do, because everything else has consequences. Like, of course, a lot of kids will say, I want to play hockey every day. Well, there's consequences to that. That means you're giving up all of this part of your life. So let's think about it. Let's really have a conversation. And ultimately, you know, especially you're like our kids' age, Lee, like an 8, a 9, a 6-year-old, if you can't manipulate that kid into thinking a little bit the way you want to think, then I don't know. And then maybe
what are we doing?
You got to keep thinking.
Yeah, we're not parenting.
You can influence those kids. I think the word, I don't know if influencing is the right word, but you're direct. You could start helping them make those decisions.
Right. Now, my son he's 25 years old now, just announced to me that he wants to take piano lessons. Now, okay, when he was 3 years old, we have a piano at home. I would sit him at that piano and I would try and get him to play. He'd jump off the piano and run around and wanted nothing to do with it. Every year I'd sit him down. I was like, this is going to be the year you're going to learn piano. Never wanted to do it. So you can't force him to do it, right? I didn't call in a piano teacher and make him sit there and force him to learn piano. Now he just finished watching the Beatles documentary and he calls me up. He says, Mom, I'm really sorry. I never paid attention to you all those years with it. I want to learn piano.
Right.
Okay. So at age 25, now he discovers he wants to learn piano. So for Christmas, I got him a little keyboard and he's learning piano on YouTube. But
awesome.
You can't force your kid as much as you want that for them.
Right.
And at some point they're going to discover maybe I should have that, but now there's a time in my life where I'm going to start doing it.
That's their passion, right? I run a rink. I run a hockey program down in Brooklyn, New York. I can't tell you all of the 40 and 45-year-old men and women that start hockey for the first time.
Right.
That are like, I don't know. Oh, I love the Rangers. I just want to try it. Like,
right.
Like, what's I go, you're 40 years old. You want to just try hockey? Great. I love it. Like, how did we do it? And just don't forget, that's a long way down. Like a 3-year-old doesn't have that far down. Right. So it's a long way down. But you're absolutely right, though. And I think that's what I love about, being involved in youth sports is that you get to see kids have this passion, but maybe unless you, like we talk about this all the time in mental fitness and coaching and getting to know your kids, try to find out what else that kid likes. And oh my God, you're a piano player? That's unbelievable. We want to hear your next recital and be, but encourage that, like encourage as a youth hockey coach, encourage the kids doing something else in the spring and not saying, listen, if you don't come to my spring program, you're going to fall behind and you're probably not going to make my team. And I think that's really hurts all of our kids.
It is the biggest fear. So many parents, want the best for their kids, obviously. And then they see other kids are doing the spring league and other kids are in the gym 5 days a week. And there's this fear that your kid is going to fall behind. And when the new hockey season rolls around, that everyone's going to be so much better than your kid.
I'll say this, and Mike started the show with this. And this is where humans are, and I am not an exception to this in any way, but this is where humans are weird, right? We said it, that if you play other sports, statistically, scientifically, everything shows you'll become a better athlete. But it's like sugar. We all know sugar is really, really bad for us. We all know that probably 20 years from now, we're going to look at sugar like smoking in the 50s, but we still put sugar in our coffee every single day. Right?
I don't.
I don't either.
All right. Well, I do.
The majority of people.
My point to you is humans know a lot of things that they shouldn't be doing and they do it anyway. It's just human nature. Right. I'm not judging anybody by that. That's always going to be true. So it's the same thing. Well, they might not make the team. Look, I'm not going to sit here and take the high road and be like, well, so what if they don't make the team? They can learn. When your kid's hurt, you hurt. And I can understand that 100%. And one of the fun parts of parenting right now for me, guys, again, my kids are 8 and 5. Right. So I'm really falling into it now. Again, Christy, you've been through it. Mike, you're in the middle of it. But one of the things that I find fascinating, this totally applies to what we're talking about, is you start to see things from two different points of view. You start to see things from your parents' point of view for the first time ever of, oh man, I sound like my dad. I sound like my mom. They used to say this to me. And then when you do that to your kids, you also kind of remember what it was like to be a kid, hopefully. All right. So one of the things that's funny about spring hockey in this situation, and Christy, I wanted to tell you this because this is something that I'm realizing now as a younger parent, is that I can't tell you how many times my parents might have said something to me and I didn't listen in the moment when I was a kid, but I still retained the lesson. All right. And I think parents have to remember that. There's a lot of times where my parents said, don't do this. And I fought them. I know what I'm doing, Dad. I know what I'm doing, Mom. You don't have to tell me. Mike, this is basically any coach coaching their own kid in hockey, right? Don't coach me, Dad. I can do it. But here's the thing, my 20s, my 30s, I remembered all of that. And I applied it later on, right? So I think it's what I'm bringing up here is parents, we have to remember, that's part of parenting, is telling your kids something over and over and over again. They don't do it. but they might do it when they're older, right? Or how many of us have done something to our kids? This has happened to me a few times where I get very stern or I parent them. I'll just put it that way. And I go, man, my mom did that to me and I hated it. And now I'm doing it to my kid, but she was right. It happens all the time.
I did that the other day with Sophia. She called up. She was really tired. What are you eating for breakfast? Are you eating a good breakfast? What are you having for dinner?
Right.
Are you eating your fruits and vegetables? And she said, Mom, you sound like grandma. I'm like, oh my God,
it's happened.
I sound like my mother.
Right.
I threw a wooden clog at one of my kids yesterday, just to help make the point.
Yeah.
But I think that's
mandatory reporters. You don't need to report that. Just so you know, just go ahead, Mike.
But it's the same thing.
I borrow that from you. Can I borrow your wooden clog? I think that's a brilliant idea.
The wooden spoon and the wooden and the clog, right? I mean, I think it's just like we just evolve, and I think we have to know that's just part of life.
Right.
And I think we can evolve in sports too. We can evolve to the point where, yes, are there Tiger Woods and Serena Williams, and yes, there are these one in a generational athletes, these unbelievable, gifted, talented people. But to get there, the sacrifice and the fact that you genetically have to be there to do it. And I just think there are kids. Listen, there's plenty of kids. I would say, you know what? The kid's phenomenal. You're doing a great job mentally with them. The person's a high honor roll student. He's in the church choir. He's, all this stuff, right? That's that kid. But there's so many hundreds of thousands of kids that aren't that. And I think what's happened in our society with sport is that the anxiety of me not making that top team or second team is so high because there is no rec anymore. Like once you don't make that team, there's nothing. It's literally,
you're right,
like just no structure and no fun. So the difference between, that's why I love, like with the NHL, what they're doing in these they call them rookie leagues,
right?
And all this structure of 10U hockey being this, it looks like hockey, you feel like hockey, it's a league, but you don't have to travel anywhere. It's all in your community. And I think that's where, those of us that are in hockey and in hockey development see like the Minnesota model and see the community model and long for that, right? Because we love the fact that you could the same kids in the ideal world, right? The same kids that you ended the hockey season with should be the kids you're on the field with.
Right.
And they should be the kids you're in music class with. And that's like this idyllic, but that's what we see. Like our model, USA Hockey's model, right, is modeled after those countries like Finland and Sweden and Norway. That's their model because those are their communities. Those kids don't get to go from one community and travel 2 hours. They are in their community and they're in their village, right? So that's in the US and the Canadian market, that's idealistic. That's like, oh my God, of course we would want that. Wouldn't we all want that? Wouldn't we all want to know that my kid could go to a rink, play hockey until they're 16, and then play all the other sports with all the same kids that are playing hockey with them, and then the best go to where they go? Yeah. I mean, there's no better scenario.
I would love to see that at every rink.
Right, but we've just opened up just a horrible system for the majority. The minority make it. The minority move on.
Right.
But the majority of us quit hockey and then get back into it and then play adult league.
Right.
So
Mike, you're bringing up a good point to remind everybody. And look, I'm saying this cautiously, that youth hockey is a business. You got to remember that too. Now, it's also the greatest thing ever. All right. If you're playing. All right. But we got to remember that it's a business, and these organizations, especially in the spring, are going to make decisions to make money. Now, I'm not saying that like, oh, evil capitalism. I'm a capitalist. I'm not against it. But what I'm saying is, as a parent, you just have to remember that in the back of your head of like, look, they're making decisions to also make money. All right. And that can be very manipulative too. If you don't play in this league, you're not going to play on my team next year. If your kid's good enough, they'll play. All right. That's the truth. If a kid's good enough, they're going to find a spot on a team. That's always
my plea, Lee, is that that ownerships and rink owners and people that run these programs, they can still make money.
Totally.
But a different model is what's better for the community. Like, I don't,
Right.
I just don't get it. And I say this lightly. I mean, like when I look at organizations that I work with, I'm like, what like calculator are you using? Like I'm using a calculator. You're using like an abacus or something. Like, I don't know what you're using to come up with the numbers that make you think you're like, if it's all about money, it's all
Right.
about the profit.
Right.
Then why would you pick a team and then take that team and go to another rink and play a
Exactly.
weekend tournament?
Exactly.
I said, why wouldn't you
They
just
feel
say,
the pressure
the
too.
kids are in my rink, they're spending money at my snack bar, they're buying my hats, my t-shirts, my slushies, and when they break their stick, they're buying a stick from my pro shop. So to me, more community, more in-house, more
Look,
programming within your rink is a
Yes.
smarter way to do it. And guess what? It actually helps the kids
I'll take it a step
in a
further
higher
for you.
level.
I'll take it a step further for you. Look, there's very few rinks nowadays that are just one rink, right? And I love it when I see rinks melt down one of their surfaces and use it for other sports, soccer, flag football. My son goes to a after school program at a roller rink, but they play every sport you can think of on those tiles. Right now, again, Mike, I know that's not an option for every rink. I know ice time brings in a lot of money. I get it. But I'm saying that, there's no reason you can't run an outside flag football program at your ice rink. That the NFL has a great 60-minute program for that. There's a lot of ways to grow the hockey rink outside just hockey. So I think for rink directors or even parents, you can suggest that. What's also funny, Mike, is that it's like every major sport is going through this kind of crisis right now of retaining people and finding new people, and you can go through them quickly. Like football obviously has a concussion problem. They're trying to solve that to get kids to play football at a youth level. A lot of parents don't want the kids playing football right now, understandably, with all the news about CTE. So they're having to find ways around that. Baseball Major League Baseball is one of the worst run leagues in sport right now. They are losing fans in droves. And one of the things about baseball is that if you look at the average age of a fan, it's going up every year, which means they're not bringing in new people. I know we have Little League, but they're not retaining that. Basketball has gotten very political, and in hockey, it's just not inclusive enough, right? We all know that, right? And to be fair, the NHL seems to be making some roadways to make it more inclusive. But Mike, to your point, the more capitalistic we make it or more selective we make it, we're going to lose people. And if you lose people, you lose money, right? You also lose your sport. So it's just kind of a warning of just, you gotta keep those rinks open for everybody. And like, look, man, I played on select teams growing up, especially when I was getting older, 17, 18. I was really blessed to play on some really high level teams. Nobody ever asked me what spring league I played on. Nobody. All right. If it was a showcase at 17, that's a little bit different because you're looking at college, some of those make sense, right? For the ultra elite. But Mike, that goes back to what you were saying at that point. At that point, you're kind of on a pathway, right? But when you're 14, pubescent, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I mean, you just got to do what's right by your kids. So like again, we have a few minutes here, obviously, but I think just kind of rounding the topic back, we have a lot of parents that listen to this show. I think it's just about helping your kids make the right decision and understanding what's going on. Like, look, it's funny. I feel the anxiety. This is the thing I've been learning this year. I feel the anxiety on the bench watching my kid. I do. I always say I'm so thankful for this show because I'm able to feel that anxiety. I want my kid to do the absolute best he can do. And it's frustrating when he doesn't in my eyes. But I also have this show to back onto of like, Lee, calm down. Like you've Christy and Mike have told you this is going to happen, and you've got to kind of suppress that a little bit or compartmentalize it. Understand that if he's smiling at the end of the game, that's all that matters right now on his 8U team. Right. And again, his head coach really understands that. I'm very thankful for that. But as a parent, you got to be careful. And I'm actually more asking this than saying it. You just got to be careful because your own inhibitions, your own attitude will negatively affect your kid, especially if you're not asking the kid, what do you want to do? Right? Like, so just coming back to spring hockey, if you're thinking about spring hockey, before you ask the coaches, and Mike, you tell me if you disagree, but before you ask the coaches and the parents and everybody, what are you doing? What select team are you going on? Maybe ask your kid, hey, do you want to play hockey in the spring? Or do you want to do something else? To me, that's the starting point, right?
Yeah. And my kids have always, and we've always asked them, what do you want to do this spring? They've always picked other sports, track, lacrosse,
right.
Band, whatever. They would pick other things to do. They needed a break. That was my kids.
Right.
And I would listen to them. Now, as Sophia got older and got more serious about hockey and decided she wanted to play college hockey, that changed.
Right.
But you got to take your cue from your kid,
Right.
listen to them, and look, and maybe you also, kind of dig a little deeper and ask them some probing questions to see if they're telling the truth and not just giving answers that they think you want to hear.
Right.
That's hard. Yeah, that's hard. In my
It is.
in my advisory role with parents, it's always like I know they should take the time off. Like I know as a dad and mom, I should make them not play. But what if they do play? And what if they find what Lee found? Like, and what and so I think it's it's just so much anxiety for parents that maybe just find the medium then. You
Right.
don't have to go all in on this tournament. But I think the one thing we all have to step back to is say all our kids aren't the same. They're not just because the 15. I would say like I got 18 kids on my roster. 18 of the kids, I could ask them the same question privately, every one of them, and I'm going to get 18 different answers. But if you put them in a room together, the first kid that says something and he's the strongest personality in the room, they're all gonna go that way, right? And I know that I can influence my boys if I say, hey, you know what? We got spring hockey coming up. This person's doing it. This is the coach. Look at the opportunity you have. This player grew up and this is what they did. And this is the path they took. You could do that. And it's hard not to do that. There's no doubt about it. But I think it's look at your individual child,
Right.
Ask them first, do you want to play? Because I love watching you play no matter what you're playing. But what you're not like to me, I kind of fall on the other side, but you're not going to not do anything. Right. So to me, at some point, I'm like, you're not going to not do anything. Like you can't be like, I don't want to do this. And I'm just going to do nothing. Well, we're doing something. So I don't give you care if you tell me you want to do a finger painting class. I don't care what it is.
Right.
We're going to have activities that are going to keep me from going insane. And, somebody else is going to have to watch you instead of me. And I'm going to pay that person to do that. So what can you do but listen to your kids if and you know what, and Chrissy, you made a great point. It might be subtle. It might not be adamant. It might not be like, I don't know if I want to play, Dad. All right. Well, let's explore that a little bit.
Right.
Let's not just say, okay, we're not playing. You're disappointing me. I can't believe you don't want this as bad as I do.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that can't be the answer either. And I think, and that to me is, as I've seen over, 30 something years of doing this with every level, especially youth hockey level. That's really where I've spent the most of my professional life. This is the time of year when the anxiety is the highest because it's a transition.
Right.
And it really sets the tone for where am I going to be to get back to this place again next year.
And it can ruin this year, Mike. It can ruin this year.
Listen, we don't even have time. We don't even have time for that conversation. But
Yeah.
you have tryouts right now, and your kid makes a team in January, and the other kids don't make a team in January. Then you got to play with that kid for 2 months.
Yeah,
I'm like,
it can ruin your team.
Yeah, and a good point about putting on that poker face when you're asking your kids questions about what they want to do, because you're right. They're gonna try and pick up on what you want. Oh, I don't want to disappoint mom. I don't want to make dad mad if I don't do the spring hockey league. So put that poker face on when you're asking them about what they want to do for spring.
Yeah, another one is like just thoughts that I have, things I deal with. I try and catch myself when I have a thought, or even I say out loud something like, when I was your age, I did this. Right. I try not to do that. And look, if it slips out once in a while, I kind of review of like, okay, why did I do that? It's their life. Yeah, it's their life. Now, with that said, you got a parent. I always think about this too. I always talk to parents about this too. Like, when you're a football fan, what makes you the biggest football fan? Is it the guy that takes his chair and throws it to the television set when the team loses because he cares that much that he wants to break his TV? Is that what makes you a great football fan? No. What makes you a good football fan, excuse me, or a good football patron is that you learn about the game, you care about the game, you invest the time in the game. I look at parenting that way. I got to push my kid. Well, yes, you do, but you got to do it the right way. You don't want to throw the chair through the TV at your kid. You want to make sure that they understand how to learn and how to understand and maybe know when to walk away or step aside for a minute. So again, I fully admit, Mike, Christy, I have not dealt with the upper level echelon of pressure in youth hockey yet. So it's very easy for me to sit here and say, just do what the right thing, right? But I can tell you at my kid's age at 8, I want him to try other things. I think it's smart. It's the same thing, like I said, with my daughter right now, like try different foods. So you learn what you like and you don't like. I don't want to eat anything else. Try other foods. Like that's how I feel about sport at the youth ages. And then I think we, all three of us said it. When you get older, yeah, it's a case by case decision. I played every single spring, but I also hadn't played before. So my attitude was I had 5 summers to make up for lost time. And this is the other key. I loved every second of it. I loved every second of being on the ice. Okay. But it's funny, Christy, Mike, I look back, I always say I never played other sports, but Mike, you made me think about this. I was in choir. In high school, and I was really dedicated to that team. And I had a whole other group of friends. It's funny because I realize now I never mixed those two worlds together. In fact, it's probably likely that no one in hockey knew that I sang. It's not because I was embarrassed. It was just I did something else. And that group influenced me in very positive ways as well, right? So everybody, parents, again, we don't judge anybody here. You got to do what you think is best with your kid, but you also have to let your kid do what they think is best for them and guide them. To me, that's what parenting is. It's like I said, depends on the decision. My daughter tells me every morning right now, I don't want to put my jacket on. That's not a choice. You put your jacket on because I'm telling you to do it and it's cold outside. That's not a choice. I don't like if she gets cold, she'll put it on. Like that's the balancing act though. There are some parents that parent that way. Right. So that's a whole nother tangent, but we got a couple minutes left. I'll let you guys have the final words.
Okay. Final words. Lee, you were in choir?
I was in choir.
I think you should close us out with a song.
Listen, I would, what's funny is, I started in like 4th grade. Like I just started and I went all the way through high school and I was in an award-winning choir as a bass, if you can believe that. Yeah. It's
hold it down on us.
Yeah. When people
Mike,
ask me that, like, tell me something about you nobody knows, that's usually where I usually go with that.
That's amazing. Wow. Mike, did you know this about him?
No, but I have seen him shoot a basketball, so I know he didn't play basketball growing up. But
I have no problem with that. That doesn't bother me at all. You should see me now. I'm much better now.
No, I know his social media is getting better and better and better. It's just
right. That's the point. That's the progress.
But I say it all the time. I mean, my best. I would venture to say that my best players, like, and I don't mean my best players, like as far as like at prep school and high school, the best kids, like the kids that had the most vibrant personalities and the kids that really helped the team were the lead in the school play, played a musical instrument, were on the debate club, were on Model UN, were ambassadors at the school. Like they're just well-rounded and they found the time. Like, and so, but I think, that's a whole, like, that's my closing thought is just the overscheduling and not allowing the time to do these other things is detrimental to your kids. And again, if they can make it through the gauntlet and they end up playing college hockey, great. But if they missed everything, and then still didn't go anywhere, it's a real damn shame.
And I can tell you, my daughter is playing college hockey, and we always made time for her to be a kid.
Right.
Yep.
It's funny, guys, I think about this, you're making me think. It's just, I often look at some of the kids' schedules that I see, and the parents like, oh, it's so exhausting to have to do all this. I'm like, how do you think your kid feels? And it's, I usually get back, it's, well, they're young, they can handle it. I'm like, I think that's wrong. I think they have more energy and I think they heal a lot faster. All right. So I think they've got that going for them. But if you're exhausted, they're probably exhausted too. All right. I see these kids on 2 or 3 different hockey teams. And again, I'm not criticizing that, but I honestly don't know how the parents do it.
Am.
Yeah. Look,
I see the kids are crying. They're crying coming to the rink. Now, do they end up liking it? Yeah. Sometimes.
Yeah. That's like, a problem. That's a problem. Yeah, everybody I know that does that. I watch a kid go from
soccer to lacrosse to baseball in a day.
It's
like,
unbelievable.
Guys, is it really? I mean, let's rethink this. But whatever. I just think at the end of the day, well, it's like anything, right? Moderation and controlling the schedule and giving time, a kid, and that's hugely important. I think we all forget that 18-year-olds are not 8-year-olds, and if we can think about that a little bit easier, and they certainly shouldn't be in a job. They shouldn't, like when I see social media posts of we're in the grind of the season and you're 8, like imagine like it's a grind, like your season is a grind. It's a January, you're in the grind of the season and you're 8. I can't even fathom it. Can't fathom it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, 38 down to 8, either way. It's a different point of your life. Christy, I will say that the singing helped me out with my podcast voice. All right, but I can do a mean that you were a mean one, Mr. Grinch. I used to have fun. Yeah, no, I won't do that to now. Listen, this was a great episode, and sometimes our unscripted episodes are the best one. Obviously, want to wish all of the listeners a very happy new year. We really hope you nothing but the best in 2022, considering the climate in the world right now. And we want to thank you for listening to our show. Our audience consistently goes up, and it's also very consistent in terms of listens. That's a blessing beyond words that you have put your trust and time into this show. And we'll keep bringing it for you throughout the entire year, especially in the springtime, right? When you're not playing hockey, we'll try and have a lot of guests on to make it work. But that's going to do it for this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. Make sure to check out whenhockeystops.com. Check out the book that Christy and I wrote. Mike Benelli's going to have a review on that soon. Really, really strong book that we wrote together. It's going to be coming out physically in late March, but you can pre-order it now and get some free gifts. So check that out. Otherwise, make sure you check out this episode and every other episode of Our Kids Play Hockey at ourkidsplayhockey.com, or you can check us out wherever podcasts can be heard. With that said, have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful year. We'll see you next time.